Yeah, so it was interesting because I asked him like, where would you rank yourself on skill? And he's like, oh, 8 out of 10. And then, of course, when we started digging in, Brent, like he just didn't know what he didn't know, right?
Yeah, I mean, he started unpacking things that were beliefs he had taken on. It's the whole concept of you get into this business, and this particular person, college educated, um, got a degree in a certain field and got into this business and knows what he knows, if that makes sense. And so, as he's explaining why he's an eight to us, we're seeing all the gaps, on how he's collecting revenue, to what he's doing to convert his business, and even how he's working his business off of a spreadsheet, for instance. So,
Well, what's funny, I mean, I know we're going to dive into this later, but what's funny is, you unpack later and he thinks that this is the way business is done and doesn't relate it to skill. And
yes, that's right.
that's the big takeaway.
And here is a real estate titan that is pushing the limits on the status quo.
And it took years and years of failing to get where I am today.
You're like, whoa, where you actually get the most clarity.
That was kind of one of those pivotal moments when I started building a business.
I spent a lot of time becoming an expert salesperson.
Let's dive into, I think one will lead into the other really nicely. So, my thought process is on mindset and how I want to inspect the mindset that I've encountered, or the mindsets I've encountered through a changing or a challenging market. So what's been your take? What's been your take, and how are people perceiving a challenging market? First of all, is it a challenging market?
Well, I know we're talking mindset, market, skill. So market will probably dive deeper. And just to set the tone, in the Boise area where you and I predominantly do our business, it's started to shift a little bit. It's getting more challenging for people who are used to putting a sign in the yard and then, overpricing a listing and getting it sold. So that doesn't seem to be working anymore. But when we go, you and I had the opportunity to go speak in Austin, and that was a different world. It was
Oh my gosh,
like,
it was insane.
yeah, completely different world. What was I mean, what did you feel when you went there? I was kind of blown away. I knew it was different, but I was like, whoa.
Yeah. So we had been comparing the two markets. I think within the previous couple months, we were looking at the difference between Austin and Boise, and the stark contrast was significantly greater than I thought. So when we were, you and I both walk in the room, and the experienced agent in the room, which guy I'm talking about, he had the hat on, and he was talking about specific areas and zip codes that had, it was a lot. What was the months of inventory?
There was one specific subdivision that had 17 months of inventory.
17 months of inventory.
And a few years ago I had, less than 2.
Less than 2. So it's seen an increase of 15 months of inventory in regards to absorption. So like that like if I'm an agent in that market, that's probably like, I really got to have a focus on my mindset. So what are some things that you're seeing in regards to mindset? And then let's talk about maybe what someone could do to focus on it. I mean, where my mind goes is the concern, influence, and control.
That's funny. That's right where my mind went as well. But before we go into maybe helping people solve some of their issues, I think one of the things I'd like to discuss is, what are the issues? So, there's a book. I read this back in 07, 08. It's called Who Moved My Cheese?
Mm.
Do you remember that book?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty simple and easy read, but something happens And now it's not the same. And people, there's kind of a couple different types of people. There's the people who just look at what happened and they're like, this isn't fair. Why is this happening to me? You know, maybe like they're legitimately thinking real estate's not for me. Here's something that's maybe a little less of a emotional to people who are in the business today. Let's go back to the NAR settlement. Think of leading up to that, the 6 months prior. What happens to someone's mindset? We saw people that were in the business for a decade and they're like, real estate's not for me. I'm done. I'm shifting careers. This is stupid. I can't believe they're challenging me on this. Right. So I think there's people that essentially, you know, dig their heels in and say, I'm not changing. So there's a lack of flexibility. That's one of the pieces we see. But then what's interesting, Brent, is I see people who are having their best year ever. In Austin, I talked to someone that was having their best year ever. In Boise, I know multiple people who are having their best year ever. And this is supposed to be a challenging year. So what is happening? How's their mindset different than the person who dug their heels in? That's what I want to investigate.
What do you think is the key difference between the two? Besides flexibility, or is flexibility the key factor and difference between the two?
I think okay, if I couldn't choose flexibility, which I do think is a huge factor, the other one would be their fixed mindset versus, you know, growth mindset. So, which is similar to flexibility, right? So they've determined. Like, let me give you an example. Let's go back to Gary Keller. He got in the business in the early 80s. The interest rates were 18%, and he went and sold 6 homes in his first month. No one told him you're not supposed to sell 6 homes in your first month of real estate when interest rates are at 18%. So he didn't know any better. He didn't have any preconceived notions. You know, just like go back to the NAR settlement, all those agents are like, this is garbage. Why do I have to get my compensation agreed upon up front? No one's going to pay me. We're never going to make money again. Like, that was the mindset going in. So how are you approaching it? The people I know that are having the best year ever, it's pretty interesting because they don't know any better, Brent.
Yeah, a similar thing. I mean, you see it all the time with new agents getting in that end up being like rookie of the year or whatever. They didn't know any better. No one told them any different. When I got out of, and I think you experienced this too, like I came out of a high volume business. So I was selling nationwide mortgages. I was doing 20 to 40 deals per month by myself with an assistant. And I get into real estate and everybody around me is like, hey, 1 deal every other month is really good. And I'm like, I'm used to closing 20 to 40 deals per month. So that didn't compute. It didn't make sense to me. And so obviously when I get in, I start thinking volume immediately and units, and I just didn't know any better. And so I don't know. I guess my question is ignorance bliss here in shifting markets? What's causing that?
Yeah. I mean, again, going back to that fixed mindset, I do think that's a big deal. You know, when I joined the builder I joined, they told me everyone makes $125 a day. And I was like, okay. And I literally did it for 2.5 years. I found out later, by the way, like no one did it. I just thought it was what we did. I'm like, they're going to fire me if I don't do it. This is a fun side note. I was working for a builder. I don't know if I've ever told you this story, Brent, but they said you have to sell 2, they called them inside deals, which effectively means someone walks in and they don't have an agent and you have to sell them one of your houses in the one neighborhood you're in. Not the whole MLS. It's not like an open house where you can get them and go move them around wherever you want. And you can sell them a house. So we had to do 2 of those a month. And that was like the standard. And I remember asking him, like, what happens? Because 1 month I only had 1 and it was coming towards the end. I'm like, what happened? Am I going to get fired? And they're like, no one does that. And I was like, oh. So I think your approach, what you we know this, Brent. What you believe, you can achieve.
Okay.
Which works against you, by the way. So if you believe the market is bad and you won't be able to hit your goals, you're probably going to be right.
Yeah, I think that goes back to what's the I'm probably gonna botch this, but if you fight for your limiting beliefs or for what you're trying to convince yourself of, you will be right and you will win.
Yeah, yeah. If you argue for your limiting beliefs, you'll get to keep them. Yep.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
And so, what's the limiting beliefs around the current changing market?
Well, let's see. Rates are too high. Sellers are unrealistic.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, they all think their home's worth way too much.
Mm-hmm.
No one's willing to price their home right.
Okay, let's unpack that one because I think that's pretty relevant right now. So first of all, if you think that sellers are unrealistic and they're not willing to price their home well, what do you think that does to the mindset of the person that's going into that appointment?
Oh yeah. Well, first of all, they're defeated before they ever get there. Because they're like, even if I get this listing, it's going to be overpriced and I'm not going to sell it. And it's going to cost me money.
Okay.
Right. Or I'm afraid I'm going to have a conversation about pricing, which mindset, market, skill. I'm going to have a conversation about pricing that I don't know how to have, or I'm not good enough to have, or I don't want to have. I don't want to have confrontation.
Well, and I think there's this belief that that sellers are have immovable objections to what should happen with their house. In other words, some people believe that they're not going to be able to go in there and deliver the market information and then use exactly what to say to get someone on board with selling their property at an aggressive rate versus a overpriced rate. And frankly, like the skill of around pricing a home right now, and this will lead back into mindset, but in the skill is you technically should be pricing your home off of what's active, not what's sold currently. And if you have the proper skill set to understand that and deliver that to a seller, and you know exactly what to say, then you're actually going to get the seller to agree, and the seller is going to have a better experience, and you're going to get your listing sold. But to the mindset side of things, the challenge is I think a lot of people are because they're coming off of the 21, 22 market, they're scared. I don't want to say the word scared. Learning a new way of presenting things is daunting, and the discomfort is what most people avoid.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean, no joke, Brent, I've talked to talented agents who have had a lot of success, and they're like, Chase, I don't even want listings right now.
Interesting.
I want buyers because, buyers are easy and there's homes out there and I can get them to buy. And it just blows me away because I ask one question. I'm like, so you don't want listings right now? And they're like, no. And I'm like, do you not want listings, or do you not want overpriced listings? And they're like, well, no, I just don't want them. I don't want overpriced listings, and everyone wants too much for their home. Like that's the thing. Which, by the way, what they're really saying is, I'm not skilled enough to get these people to price their home properly to cause it to sell. But they don't focus on that. So I think we can talk. We can talk mindset for 45 minutes. I don't even know if we have time to get to the other two, but you tell me how deep we want to go here.
Well, we have time. I really want to dive into. So, I mean, we've talked some like overarching things. We've talked, some tangible reasons to have a good mindset. Now I want to talk about a model. Like, so if someone's listening to this, they're like, neat. Like, and
yeah, you got me.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah. My mindset's in the gutter. Great. like my favorite model, and really it's an awareness model, right? It's learning how to be aware, because ultimately the only thing that matters is what you can control. And then you have to and then awareness around the things that are out of your control. So walk me through or paint the picture around the model that I'm talking about.
Yeah. So you're talking about the circle of influence, essentially, the circles of influence. There's 3 circles, and the outer circle is concern. And then the middle circle, not the very middle, but the second circle in, is influence. And then, of course, the center is control. And so, what can you control? What can you influence? And then what is of concern? So that's effectively what we're talking about. And what's interesting, Brent, is what can you actually control?
Your mindset, your skill, your knowledge.
Notice everything he said is meaning you. You can control yourself. You can't control someone else's mindset. You can't control someone else's knowledge. You can't control, any of that. So those people closest to you, though, you might be able to influence.
Totally.
Right. So if you go sit with a seller, can you influence them?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And so what's in your control? What's in your control is, having skill, having the knowledge and skills to be able to have an appropriate conversation. Then ultimately there's that outer circle of concern. And I think I hate to go back in time, but I just think it's so prevalent for anyone who's been in the business for at least a year. The NAR settlement is a great example of all 3 of these circles, right? Because what we kept hearing over and over and over was one specific circle. It was the circle of concern. It was like, no one's going to pay commission. I sat with a top producing agent, Brent, November. Hold on. Let's see.
I think I was sitting there with you.
Yeah. It was like we were at a mastermind. This is someone who sells whatever, $100 million of real estate a year. And she looked me in the eyes and she says, no agent will ever make X% again repping a buyer. It's never going to happen again. And I should have gotten a contract with her and bet her like $100,000 because I told her, I'm like, you're crazy. I guarantee that not only am I going to get X% again, but everyone I coach and lead is going to get X%. But they were focused on the area of concern, which was like, this change is impacting everything. So fast forward to today, like, what are the concerns, Brent? What kind of concerns are they having?
Well, I mean, let's just use the specific example because we already went down that vein, but now you can apply the model to it, right? So the specific example is sellers wanting, not being reasonable, sellers thinking their home is worth more than it is, sellers wanting to extract as much money out of their house as possible by overpricing it. Like that's concern, in my opinion.
Sure. Well, and think about like, what can you control? Can you control what a seller wants for their home? Can you control that? No, not at all. Can you control what they think the market is? No. Can you control, interest rates? Because interest rates have a big influence on the ability to sell homes. No, you can't. But how much of your life, and I guess this is the real critical question from a mindset perspective, how much of your life is spent in each circle? And I would argue that people spend a majority of their life focused on concerns. And that's where people get trapped. That person who's having the best year ever doesn't know any better. Maybe they don't even know that rates are high because rates have always been 7% for them.
They're in the reality is if you take the example of someone getting in and they don't know any better. So you got in and they said, hey, just do this, and you did it. It really was a false, call it concern, guiding your actions. And what I mean by that is what was out of your control that you thought was you have to do this or else you get fired. So it was having influence on you, which then impacted what you did have control over, which was your actions and the way you wanted. Like you could have been pissed off about it every day and felt like you were in a horrible spot and hated your job. Or
Plenty of people did, by the way.
Yeah,
Plenty of people just quit.
Yeah, you could have a good attitude about it and just push through and say, hey, this is going to make me better. This is happening for me, not to me. And so I think that just paints the picture of like, here's what you have control over as it pertains to concern. You have control over how you're going to view the things around you that fall into concern. That's it. So like meaning all of those things that the seller that are out of my control, that are concerns, what the market, the rates, what sellers are, whatever. Like my perception of that is going to guide or be guided by what I have control over. And the challenge is I think a lot of people aren't aware enough to realize they actually have control of the perception of concern.
Yeah. Well, you have control over how you react to it.
Totally. 100%.
Yeah. So you can sit there and, my life is over. My jobs are in. Like, look at AI. AI is coming in. And whether you like it or not, AI is coming into every facet of your life. It's coming into your kids' schools. It's coming into your real estate. It's coming in. If you're listening to this and you have a job that is unrelated to real estate, I guarantee you AI is touching it. Now, we can look at that from a concern perspective and be like, we're never going to be able.
No one's going to have jobs.
Exactly.
Yes.
Or we can be like, okay, well, how do I react to this? How does this impact me and what can I do about it? I want to say one last thing about mindset, because I think this is super powerful for listing agents. So listing agents out there or anyone who wants to sell a house, like actually list and sell a home. Let's think about the mindset of that person, Brent, who doesn't want to take a listing because sellers are unreasonable and they're overpriced and whatever. So if they have that mindset, which there are tons of people who have that mindset, then we know they're probably not purposefully seeking out as many listing appointments as they possibly can. Would you agree?
Correct. 100%.
So their fear, like, let's just explore this for a second. I'm a very logical person. Their fear is I'm going to go on the appointment and they're not going to hire me because I want them to price it at a price that will cause it to sell. That's their fear, right?
Yes.
So their fear is they're not going to hire me. Well, just like I taught my young son who was wanting to ask a girl out, I'm like, why haven't you asked her out? He said, well, I'm afraid she'll say no. I'm like, what happens if you don't ask her out?
Nothing.
The answer's freaking no, bro. Like, you got to ask her out. So worst case scenario is she says no, but at least you took that shot. And so I see agents who are like, well, I'm just going to not go on listing appointments and then I won't get rejected. So what you're really actually afraid of is someone's not going to hire you, and that's going to hurt.
Well, I think you're also afraid of wasting your time or energy or money if you, quote unquote, do take the listing because it is overpriced.
Well, yeah. But those are one and the same, Brent, because I'm afraid I'm going to go on the appointment and I'm not going to be able to get the price I want. And so they're not going to hire me. So I take the listing at too high of a price and it's not going to sell. And then they're going to fire me anyways. And so I'd rather just not go on listings altogether. And I think the point is, like, what if, and this is where we probably need to pivot. Like, what if you were just really good and you got them to do what you wanted and you weren't worried if they didn't hire you?
Okay. So let's talk about that then. How how in your eyes can someone improve at getting listings? And first of all, let me say why I think it's important to get listings right now. Like getting listings is going to be the new, like getting buyers was, 3 years ago. It's going to be very easy to get a listing as an agent, right? So it's going to be very hard to find buyers. So if it's easy to get listings, that means untalented people are going to get listings. Yes or yes?
Yes.
Okay. So if we work on our skill set and setting expectation and our professionalism, we'll get our unfair share of getting those listings and being able to sell them. But the bigger piece is those listings will actually help us generate buyer opportunities, which are going to be harder to come by. And so the listing becomes the avenue of your business. I mean, I think this was all, in the Shift book and Gary's lead listings leverage concept the entire time is he who controls the listings controls the market. That's in both markets. So I guess let's talk skill set and how someone can improve their ability to take an effective listing, because taking a listing is going to be easy, but taking an effective listing is going to be hard.
So the first thing is we wanted to go mindset, market, skill, and we're kind of jumping to skill, but I'm going to hit at market for a few minutes because you need to know your market. That is a skill. Like you need to absolutely know the market. Brent said something earlier. You might have heard it and maybe you're going to do something about it, maybe you're not. But traditionally, most people, when they're taking listings, are looking at comps that have sold in the last 6 months or 12 months or whatever. And that's cool. But what's something sold for 6 months ago, depending on your market, of course, depending on where you're at. But if your market is maybe in a downward trend,
I would even say if it's even.
Yeah, if it's even, but inventory's climbing. If inventory's climbing in any way, then the active comps actually are way more significant than the pendings and solds. So
Why
that's
is
what
that?
Brent
Why is
mentioned.
that?
Why is that? Because that's your competition, right? I mean, here's an easy activity that you can do. Look in the MLS right now. For just pick your own house if you want, or pick a recent listing you took, or maybe you didn't get, or whatever. Look in the MLS. You can go to solds and all that crap, but forget about that for a second. Look at active listings. Then go for the last 30 days, same search criteria, get rid of active and just put pending. How many homes are selling per week? And you compare that to the active listings, and now you know what your competition is. So if there's 30 active listings and each week 3 of them go pending, okay, that means you've got 10 weeks if nothing new comes on the market, which we know is not happening because you can throw a rock and hit a listing right now. So if you're going to be one of those 3 that sells, you should probably be in the top 3.
So you need to be in the top 10% of how you're priced, because only 10% of listings are selling.
Well, only if you want to sell, Brent. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So how do you explain that to a seller though? Like, how do you get a seller on board? Here's the challenge. Let me give you the limiting belief that even I've had in the past, and I've heard it from sellers, is sellers think the agent wants to underprice my listing because they don't want to work for the commission. They want to just underprice it so it sells immediately so they get their commission.
Okay. Well, let me just ask you a question, Brent. You're an agent and you're very talented, very smart, got a lot of history. I would ask this to any group of agents. I'll ask this exact question. Does more days on market, Brent, get you more money? Why not?
Never. Well, if anybody's ever shopped for a house, and by the way, if this were me talking to a seller, I would say, hey, I'd walk them through this. Like, walk me through the last time you're shopping for a house. If you saw a house on the market and the average days on market was 17, and you saw a house on the market for 30, what would you think? And the answer is, what's wrong with it? It's the,
why did no one else buy it? I don't want to be the only idiot that buys
what's
it.
wrong with it, itis? There's something wrong with that house. And if I'm going to, like, maybe I'll go look at it, but there's a reason why other people said no. So if I do buy that thing, I'm going to ask for a discount.
Yeah. So what we're starting with here is a foundational belief, which is like, what do you actually believe? Like, what do you believe in your core? If it was your own house as a real estate agent, what would you do? Would you price it too high and wait 60, 90 days? Most agents, anyone who knows how the market works, is like, hell no. I'm going to list the thing aggressively, get it sold as fast as I can. And if there's a lot of activity, maybe I'll get multiple offers, right? That could happen. But days on market doesn't work. And here's why, in case you're out there and you're like, whatever, every market's a little different, by the way. But in case you're out there and you're like, well, my market's X or Y or Z. So here's reality. So if it's worth 500 grand and they want to try 550, it's on the market 30 days. They lower it to 525, still too high. On the market 60 days, now they lower it to 500. Now it's within the market. And that's assuming the market didn't drop while you're on the market, okay? So let's just assume everything stays the same. They're like, okay, let's do the 500 like you said, Chase. It should sell now. And you're the agent who's like, okay, cool. And you're like, yes, we finally got a price right. Buyers come in, which is way less because the marketing window, that thing's old and stale and everyone's already seen it. They're like, man, they've kind of ruled it out, right? It's hard to get them back. So you're going to have less people looking at it. And when they do finally come look at it, do you think they're going to want to offer the price you have it listed at? The answer is no. They're going to want to get a deal. So now they're going to offer $475. So 60 days on market, finally got a price right. Now people are going to want to negotiate. That's reality. That's the way real estate works. And you, as a real estate agent, know that. So why are you not, with conviction, Brent, telling your client the truth?
Okay, well, here's the way you do that. So now let's go into a skill set piece. So now we know that as agents, you build that story in your head because it's true. And now you just need to formulate how you're going to present that to the client. So here's how I would do it. So Chase, you're the seller, right? My job is to get you to believe that you don't know everything you need to know about pricing and selling your home. Okay. So I have to get you to question yourself. So I'm going to do that with a
you're
question.
You're not telling me this. This is just, you're telling realtors this. Okay.
Yeah. I'm telling realtors. So you're going to be the seller and I'm going to ask a question that's going to put you in that frame of mind, put me as the expert and give me the ability to explain it. And because they question their knowledge in it, they're going to side with me. The goal is to get them out of the emotion and into the logic. Okay. All right. So Chase, you're the seller. You ready?
I'm ready, man.
Chase, what's your understanding with how homes sell if they've been on the market for too long?
I mean, I don't really know. Like, I don't have a ton of understanding. I'm just assuming that, maybe they wanted to try a higher price or something.
Okay. So we can stop right there. What that question does is it frames it in a way where it makes you have to give an answer. And if you don't have enough data to give the answer, you're going to say that. You're going to say, honestly, I don't really know. So now that you've put a seller in the position of admitting that they don't really know, or if they did know, they're going to know what you know. I mean, that's the likelihood of it. Or if they give an alternative response that's counterintuitive to what you're going to tell them, at least now you know where they stand. So in all three positions, you're being put in a position of being an expert. So you ask that question, then you just go into explanation or ask a few deeper questions. But if they say, I have no idea, say, great. Well, do you mind if I explain from my experience in selling hundreds of homes or thousands of homes or whatever it is you've sold, what happens with homes that are on the market for a long time?
Side note, just a bonus tip for anyone who's like brand new or hasn't sold a lot of homes, use your brokerage or your team or whatever. Instead of saying why I've sold a lot of homes, say why we, because your brokerage has probably sold hundreds of homes, right? So
correct.
Keep going.
So once you've done that, then you can go into, and again, this is you knowing the market and practicing your delivery of this. And I always do it by putting the seller into the buyer's shoes. So in this particular instance, I'd say, okay, well, let me ask you this. If you were buying a house today and your budget was 500 and there was a home that was 500 and had been on the market for 90 days, a home that was 500 and that was 500 and has been on the market for 1 week. Which one are you going to be more drawn to, and why?
Well, I mean, I guess I don't really know which one I'd be more drawn to, but if I had to write an offer on one, like I would assume I have more leverage on the one that's been on the market.
There you go. So whatever the answer is, right? They're going to say, well, I'd like the new one. Why? Or I would like the old one. Why? The old one I can probably get a discount on. Or I would like to see both. If they say I'd like to see both, say, great. Well, let's say you actually see both and you end up wanting the one that's been on the market for 90 days. Or what do you think about that property that's been on the market for 90 days? What do you think your offer should look like? So you literally can walk them through the process of being a buyer under multiple, and it doesn't matter what their answer is. The goal is to get them to be in the shoes and the mindset of a buyer. Now, when you go into pricing the home and you go over the strategy, where the market is, and the strategy of having to be better than the competition, priced better than the competition, and now you can go back and anchor it to, we don't want to be on the market longer than what the market suggests, which is 30 days or whatever. We want to, and the only way we're going to do that is if we're priced better than 90% of the competition that's out there. And here's how I came up with that number. That's it. That's how I personally would handle it.
Now, if someone's, which by the way, that's great. And I hope whoever's listening to this is taking notes with the intention to implement, because this is the goods here. So let's just say that client just says, you know what, Brent, I heard everything you said. I had a vision that we have to list it at a higher price. Can we just try it?
Well, as much as I would like to try it, I'm investing my time, energy, and resources into selling your property. And if your goal is to get the most amount of money, then trying it's not going to do that. That said, if you want to try it and you're okay with the potential of your home selling less for less than what I'm suggesting it would sell for today, if you're okay with that, then I'd be willing to put a price drop plan together with you based on where we're at in days on market. If you're willing to do that and you're okay with the potential of it selling for less than what I'm recommending today, then I would be willing to go through that process.
Which, by the way, what you're doing there is you're reminding me to be like, hold on, why would it sell for less? We're asking more. And that's if they didn't get it, right? Like sometimes people just don't get it, and you can go right back to like, well, let's walk back through it.
Yep. And just so like what you explained earlier, the stair step. So it's not
and
that
so sorry to interrupt. I just want to put a point here. You are willing to take an overpriced listing if they agree to a pricing strategy,
and they agree that they would be willing to take less than what I'm currently recommending.
Yeah, this could cause us to make less money. You understand that?
Yeah. Here's the thing. You have to be willing to not take the listing in order to negotiate taking an overpriced listing. Meaning you have to say, look, I don't think we should, or I wouldn't take it at all because of the time, energy, and resources I have to put in unless you agree to X, Y, and Z. If they say no, then that's the standard you have to live by. And by the way, you're protecting yourself, your time, and your profit by doing that, because nobody's going to win if they don't agree to that.
Yeah. Ever. Side note, you and I met with an agent not too long ago, and they had taken on, it was $20,000 in expenses for a listing. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And by the way, I believe the listing expired or they let it go. And so they literally invested 20 grand in a listing and never sold it.
Yeah. And it was overpriced.
Yep.
And so it was overpriced, and the seller was unwilling to move the price at all.
And
so,
side note, the agent brought a cash offer, and there was only, I want to say like a 1% difference where the seller didn't want to pay the commission of the buyer's agent, and the whole deal didn't go through. And so this is interesting. Like, you know, it's easy to have hindsight. That agent's like, I wish I never would have taken this listing. Well, guess what? If you would have been very intentional up front with pricing strategy and movement for your client, you would have found out back then that you never wanted the listing.
yeah. Well, also, there's a likelihood, I don't know how high, like some sellers are unreasonable, and this person does sound fairly unreasonable. They lost the deal over 1%, and then it didn't sell, never sold. But that said, there is a likelihood that had it been presented properly up front and you held your ground with accurate data and logical reasoning, and you ask questions in a way that got the seller to realize they're not the expert here, there was a chance, I don't know how big, but that you could have got the seller on board with doing it the right way. There's definitely a chance if you approach it the right way with the right line of questioning.
Well, and I know we got to land the plane here. Let me say one last thing on this, and then we can kind of get out of here. So the last thing on this particular topic is that, let's just use that agent we know who spent 20 grand. The $20,000 hurts. The daily text messages and phone calls and what are you doing to sell my house? That cost her way more business and stress and time, and you know, like lack of being present with her family because she's dealing with these texts and this unruly seller. Guys, taking overpriced listing, if you're like me, you only have to do it 30 or 40 times before you decide that you don't want to do it ever again. But you could just trust me and trust Brent and this other person and never do it again, because it's costing you way more than you think.
Yeah, I mean, I'll emphasize this. We are not in the same market we were in where you could take an overpriced listing and dip your toes in the market and test it. We are in a skill-based market where professional real estate agents properly educate their sellers. They properly tee it up in order to get the seller what they actually want. And the reality is the seller wants to sell for the most amount of money possible. Overpricing a listing will not achieve that.
Well, and that's why we do the foundation of like, do you believe more days on market will get you more money? And the answer is no. So as a realtor, you owe it to your client to make sure you educate them. And by the way, you have two markets, Brent. You have sellers and triers. And you need to find out during your listing appointment if you're dealing with a seller or a trier. And that's your job. And by the way, go back to the active listings. You want to be in the top 10%. The bottom 80%, those are triers.
They are, dude. They are. Well, they're either triers or they're people that unfortunately got with an inexperienced agent that let the seller dictate the price without a plan to sell.
Good point.
So, all right. So we gotta land the plane. We gotta tie
this was fun, man.
Yeah, this was good. If you were, what do I want to say? How do I want to say this? If you had a choice to focus on building your skill set around any form of networking or lead generation, what would be your number one source or skill set wrapped around? So would it be open houses, door knocking, phones? Would it be?
This might say more about my personality, but I think it also has to do with what's going on today. Like, I would master expired listings just with the market we're going into. You know, here's what I know about expired listings. They want to sell. They're willing to pay a real estate professional. And you know, they're bountiful. There's plenty of them out there. I would absolutely master those. You know, go ahead.
Just key point, and it's re-emphasizing what I said earlier. Listings are going to be easy to get. Non-professional agents are going to get listings. Sellers are going to have a horrible experience because of that, and then they're going to expire. The bar will not be very high to go and outperform that previous agent on a listing. So mastering expired listings is going to be the new, like, the person that does that is going to be a massive listing agent.
Yeah, I mean, part of me feels like I just want to be an ISA for an hour a day and call them for fun because it's really fun. And there's a ton.
It is. Yep. All right. Chase, that concludes our real estate therapy session.
Hey, that was fun, man. I enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you want more of this, maybe you should let us know because you're probably going to get it anyways, but we'd love to hear your feedback. If there's
Give us some positive feedback so we feel good about it.
Yay, there's one. Thanks, Brittany. Thanks, Rebecca. We appreciate you guys.
All right. See you later.
Bye.